meeting to order at 7:19. So the official recording should start at 7:19 p.m.
On.
And I need a motion to accept the minutes from our last meeting.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay, Michael
Second.
started it, and then this son and daughter duo tied for the second. I said son and daughter.
I'll
Father
give it
and
to
daughter.
Kirsten. Doug has a
duo.
few.
That's because you look so young, Doug. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Boy, you caught out that one, all right.
Okay, so we are now back to Debbie's presentation. We left off with the budget.
Sure, I'll put it up on the screen. While I'm doing that though, I did look at this survey today. There were only 3 additional surveys. So I didn't print out a new copy. So we probably need to think about how to get people to respond to that.
Yeah, our box is probably pretty much the same as it was the last time we shook it.
Again, I think when we invite the new candidates into this, I think that will generate a lot more conversation.
Because then they'll know that, you know, these are out there and need to be filled in.
They've got a great network, so I mean, if they're interested in getting feedback, which I would imagine they would be, then that would be fantastic.
And I'm assuming the link is on the website so people can just tap the link and get in, and on the Facebook page, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Trying to get Neil in the shot too. It's not like, oh, there you are.
I don't need to be in there.
You're in there now.
We definitely.
little
Oh yes,
tiny-
we need to.
You
We
gotta
always need a
see
little
Neil.
Neil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not in there, Michael.
All right, that's right. I know you don't like. I want to say about that.
Neil's real tiny.
So I know that you're just trying to avoid the financial procedures by having the elected fix.
Yep.
I know how this works. So what I updated everything we talked about last time. I wanted to highlight these because I changed the wording here just a little bit. I wanted to make it clearer than it was before. So for budget message, operating budget, and capital improvement plan, I just added a sentence that says the specific contents of the budget message shall be set forth in further detail in the administrative code. And I did that for the operating budget and the capital improvement plan. So I just wanted to make it clear that if you know, to look for the specific details about that, those would be set forth in the admin code. And then I updated everything, and I'll send this out as an updated version. We had actually, I think we were talking taxation. We actually were finishing up with taxation. And I just wanted to, you know, start there again, because as I said last time, this is probably the most important, maybe the most important piece of the entire charter, where this actually gives council in section B, it says subject to the applicable provisions of state law, the council in its sole discretion shall determine the rates of all taxes. And then what we decided was that an ordinance would only be required for new taxes or increases in the rates of taxes. So if you were actually just carrying over the same tax levy, like the EIT, if it continued to be at the same rate, you would not have to do a new ordinance. You would only have to do a new ordinance if you were going to increase the levy, the tax rate. So is everyone okay with that? Does that make sense?
Are you on C?
810 A, B, and C, yeah.
And I have a question on C. Says adoption of the tax ordinance shall be required for new taxes. That was my understanding under home rule that we didn't have the power to create new taxes. It was just that we could change the rate. Or we can't create any new taxes that are already in the third class city code. Is that correct?
That is correct. However, from time to time, and not very often, the General Assembly does create, like they did the local service tax. And everybody had to, if they wanted to adopt that, they had to adopt a new ordinance. I guess, Michael, you would be best to answer that. There have been times when there are new taxes.
Yes. The Home Rule Charter and Optional Plans Law talks about Home Rule Charters not being allowed to create new subjects of taxation with regard to coming up with new ways to tax different things, such as you can't tax automobiles or you can't tax insurance policies.
Alcohol.
Yeah,
Alcohol's
alcohol
another
or,
one.
things like that, which would be new subjects of taxation. So it's implied and understood that a home rule charter can only deal with the taxes that are already in law. And as you know, you have the opportunity to increase certain, what the home rule law talks about is personal taxes, which would be earned income, real estate, and the deed transfer tax. So rarely are you going to see home rule charters that mirror what's in the law about being prohibited from creating new subjects of taxation. But with that being said,
Well, when I read new taxes, somebody out in the public is going to read that we're going to create taxes that don't even exist right now.
well, it's implied and understood that it's not permitted. And
Right. I mean, one of the things, just as an example, and this has been kicked around for years to allow the counties to, assess sales taxes, and they would have to adopt, those by ordinance. Although that's at the county level, so I guess that's not a real good example. But there could be a time when the General Assembly actually allows a new tax of some kind. This kind of covers that possibility. Again, we're writing
see
it
what-
so that we don't have to make changes ever.
I see what Jerry's getting at, though. I think that this whole area is going to be a flashpoint. And I think we should strike shall be required for new taxes or. So it should just be the adoption of a tax ordinance for
any,
increases in the rates of existing taxes. And then if the state legislature says, do that, well, then that would override, right? No.
Can you say something as like, or as prescribed by the state legislature, or something indicating that it wouldn't be the cities?
But we
Yeah,
have
I get what you're
in
saying.
B, we have subject to the applicable provisions of state law.
There you go. That's so there it is right there. So if state law changes, then we've already said the rates are going to be subject to I guess that's rates,
Yeah.
but still.
Well, can we just strike out the words for new taxes and just put shall be required in the rate?
Yeah, I just did that. I just took it out.
Yeah, it's gone.
It's gone. It now says the adoption of the tax ordinance shall be required for any increases in the rates of existing taxes.
how about the issue with your millage rate regarding the last sentence? No public notice shall be necessary for the reenactment of taxes levied annually at the same rate. So would that mean, which I think it does, that if you're going to reenact the same millage rate for real estate taxes, you would not have to have any kind of formal action to enact it, meaning it would have continuous effect until changed, until changed. So normally,
Yeah, the way it's written now, I think that's correct.
okay, so just conversely, currently, whether you keep the millage rate the same as the third-class city code or not, you still have to adopt an ordinance enacting the millage rate for every budget year. What this is doing is saying you don't have to do that anymore unless you're going to increase a rate, the rate
Right.
for the millage.
Neil had a couple
would-
of questions too, if you didn't hear.
Excuse me,
Go ahead.
and then I'll go to Neil, but
Okay.
all this is saying is public notice. It's not saying that the council doesn't have to vote or anything like that. It's just the public notice posting, right? That's the issue.
Well, no, it's saying the adoption of the tax ordinance shall be required for increases in the rates of existing taxes.
Right.
So,
But for the
Converse-
reenactment of taxes, the issue is the public notice.
right.
Yeah.
So you would not have to do a new ordinance or a public notice if the tax rate stays the same.
Sorry, Neil.
No problem. My questions were, first, is there, and I know people are gonna be very interested in increases in taxes, is there gonna be a cap to how far they can increase it from year to year? Cap, like, okay, once you get to this point, you can't increase anymore without, going back in and changing something.
There's a state cap, right, Mr. Foreman?
This eliminates the cap.
Oh, okay.
Not under home rule. No
Okay.
cap under home rule.
Somebody
Real
has-
estate, earned income, or deed transfer.
Didn't we talk about way back when we said we'd get to this section that we would consider putting in a maximum percent raise or maximum amount you could raise it each time?
I think we
We
did.
did.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is this. You don't know when you set the rate, how much you're gonna collect. You can estimate how much you're gonna collect. But when you put a cap on it, you're putting an arbitrary number and you really don't know. You know about what a mill of tax or a percent of tax is gonna generate, but really difficult to put a cap that's a percentage, because then you're actually dealing with what are the actual dollars that you're going to collect.
Well, I feel like this is gonna be the biggest selling point to me. That's gonna be what people are gonna be asking about.
I mean, the benefit of a home rule is that you get rid of those caps, because you don't control what the assessments are. The county controls that. So you really don't know what the millage you're going to need to support your services. You can put a cap in, but the home rule charters that I've seen where there's a cap always end up being a huge problem, because voters will never vote to get rid of that cap. And if you find out it's a problem, then there's not a whole lot you can do with it.
That's my whole point. I mean, will they vote for this with the cap is my question. There's no verbiage
Well,
that speaks about that at all.
I think what I was thinking of something else, not necessarily a cap. It's like how much each year you could raise it. Like it's not a cap overall. It's just a bit of a limit in there. So people feel protected, so they are protected, but also the next year you can raise it again if you need to. Is that, I think
But
that's a
here's
little
the
different.
point. Okay, if you said, for instance, you can't raise it more than 5%. What is that? 5% of what?
They
Or
may-
like by the mill, like not necessarily percentage, like whatever the normal amount is used to raise a tax.
It's just tricky too, because so say, for some reason population incredibly either increases or decreases. I mean, there's so many variables, and that's the whole problem with putting limits or like setting any limit, because you can't predict the future. There has to be some sort of a trust, unfortunately, between, elected, oh, sorry, my dog is itching, shaking my whole computer.
Doesn't matter if it doesn't get voted in.
Yeah, I
Right.
think,
I mean, but this is, yeah. I mean, this is the whole, and this, I do think
yeah,
there's a strong argument for putting those limits in there, because, or having some sort of something that makes people feel like they're protected, whether they agree with the current city government or not. But I also I understand from the other side, like a balanced budget perspective, that you need to be able to do what you need to do. So
Yeah, I
I
just
don't
see
know.
that, what Neil's saying, the public's gonna take it like they can just keep raising, 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 and then, it's gonna get
Right.
out of
Same thing
control.
everybody's worried about.
Yeah,
Right,
But
absolutely. I would say that's the number one concern. It's not, and I mean, there's nothing else here that could be anti-beneficial. That's not really a thing.
red
But I
flag.
mean, there's nothing in here that's detrimental until we get to somebody having to pay more money out of their pocket. And that's honestly, that's the bottom line for everybody. So I think it behooves us to spend a lot of time on the language that we use here,
But
because
without this authority, the council has no choice but to only raise property taxes.
Yeah.
And
I
nobody
understand.
nobody
Right.
wants that.
no, nobody wants to raise.
know we
No,
Yeah. not
Changing the
doing
way
that.
people were taxed. And I don't see any,
Yeah, we just need some wording that makes the public feel protected, that they're not gonna get so taxed.
well,
that
I mean,
they afford it.
yeah, there's got to be something in there, because otherwise, even if we educate and say, like, okay, so this is not the intention. We don't want to raise property tax. We want to raise tax on things that are for people who are earning income, not on fixed income. But there's that. I mean, we can educate till we're blue in the face. But if somebody comes in here and wants to run with this in a negative fashion, they can do that, right?
Mhm.
There is
So
no
I do-
elected, there's no elected official in the history of elected officials that wants to raise taxes. In fact,
I
usually,
know.
they
I
usually
know.
don't raise them when it's really necessary. They always cut services before they
Right.
raise taxes.
That's why.
So, but
Mhm. That's exactly why the taxes weren't being raised.
Right.
In
Which
what,
is why-
And that's-
what did they say, 13?
But we understand that. But how does that translate into people who don't see that, or who only are afraid? And that's my question. Because if there are no boundaries in the language, then people are going to assume that there's no boundaries at all, and that eventually somebody's going to come in and take over, and we're all going to be screwed.
Yeah.
And like there's
Naturally, the biggest political problem is a mistrust of people, right? Like huge mistrust.
exactly.
And like
Yep.
I didn't know that politicians didn't ever want to raise taxes after they were elected until you said that, Debbie. So like,
Ever. I've never seen one politician ever.
but that's like not that's not the narrative that people have,
I know.
really.
I know.
So,
Mhm.
since I mean nobody wants to raise taxes, and they hadn't been raised in years and years and years. If you have a amount that you can raise it each year, I'm not sure how that would limit it so much. If like it didn't work this year, so we need to raise it a little bit next year. If you haven't been raising it, and you don't want to raise it that much, I don't see how a small just on protection would cause a bigger problem than never having raised it.
You can put a cap in. I'm saying I would highly recommend not doing that. But if you feel that to get a comfort level, you need to do that, you can put a cap in. And you can do that for real estate. You can do it for EIT, and you can do it for deed transfer. But the problem becomes is if you need to have that ability, or you're going to cut, police or fire or something. I would hate for the charter to limit that. I would think it should be up to the council, but you guys
Something
know
else.
better than I do about your
Can
community.
we word it that way, that, some sort of cap will be decided by a vote of council?
Well, something else to consider within this context, which is instead of thinking about a literal cap with a number to it, a couple of you just alluded to it, you could say something to the effect that it would take more than just majority, like a plurality. Instead of 3 out of 5, it would take 4 out of 5 votes, affirmative votes, to increase a real estate, an earned income, a deed transfer tax. So you're not capping it at 2%, 5 mils. It's just a plurality of council, which is where the burden is anyway when you raise taxes.
Yeah, that wording.
That I like. That I like.
Mhm.
Here's a question.
It
Maybe I'm
doesn't.
just. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So in the previous section, on the budget thing, it said that they were going to pass a budget every year that listed, any tax, how they're going to get the revenue. Does the Home Rule Charter or Third Class City Code allow for changing taxes mid-year, or is it just with the budget approval?
Normally, taxes are set at the beginning of the year for the entire year.
Right. Okay, that's what I was thinking. And so like that, yeah, that makes it like you're not going to change the tax in the middle of the year because you didn't know how it was going to come in.
Correct. However, you can institute a new tax, hypothetically, earned income tax if you didn't have one, or a local services tax if you didn't have one. You could institute it at the end of the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, but you can't change the rate once it's set for the entire fiscal year.
Which is kind of common sense because the taxes that you're going to generate is what helps you balance the budget. So once the budget is balanced, you can't really change the rate or your budget won't be balanced anymore.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to clarify that because then being able to raise it by a certain amount every year, having even any sort of protective language in there shouldn't really matter too much, except to protect the people, really. Then, if you're only
Jerry or Debbie, can you give us an example of a home rule charter that limits the raise in taxation in any given year? Not a total cap, but just a limit to how much it can change from one year to the next. Would you have a home rule?
The one that stands out to me the most is the amount of revenue generated by the combination of real estate tax and earned income tax could be no more than 10% in 1 year. So, for example, in the city of Beaver Falls, that would generate about another $400,000 using at 10%.
So they can change it 10%.
So it's on a percentage basis rather than saying can't raise it by more than 3 mils or some finite number like that. It's based on the percentage.
Jerry, how does that work?
But you have to calculate you don't know exactly what you're going to collect.
Yeah, you don't really know though. You don't know what's happened to income in your city, with people moving out or moving in. You don't know. So I imagine, that seems like that would be really, I guess it would be an upper limit, and you would try to design something that would be well away from that upper limit.
It's a moving target.
Yeah, I kind of like the way that Michael Foreman was phrasing.
With the council members.
Right.
What if we made it unanimous?
That's a very high threshold.
Yeah, unanimous is tough.
We'll get an agreement.
Yeah.
What about if you said if in the event that the taxes are increased by more than 5%, then you have to have a supermajority of 4. The percentages bother me just because I'm a financial person, because I know even when the state imposes those, you're just estimating anyway. You just have no idea what exactly you're going to collect.
Yeah.
An analogy is when you go through a countywide reassessment, the year it goes into effect, you cannot receive more than 10% of the revenue that you received the prior year.
But what if you do?
Well, then you have to lower taxes in subsequent years.
But you don't, but people don't do that. I mean,
I know, and it's a moving target, and it's really hard to pin down because while the new assessments go into effect, normally you're still going through assessment appeals that will reduce the assessed value of your tax.
Yeah.
and
property.
refund, all kinds of refunds. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so, I mean, it's a pretend, I mean, you can pretend that that it works, but honestly, and this, like Michael said, the state puts those kinds of caps in, but honestly, calculating it is a nightmare because you can't really do it.
So any taxes that you wish to create would have to have state approval beforehand?
No, the taxes you levy now already have state approval, which you could levy under home rule without caps like earned income, real estate, and D-transfer. So they're already authorized by law for non-home rule communities, but non-home rule communities can exceed caps that non-home rule communities have to follow, again, for real estate, earned income, and the D-transfer tax.
Well,
So
why not lay the blame on the state then and state something like the adoption of a tax ordinance after public comment shall be required for any rate change of state approved taxes? That way you're saying, we're not doing it, the state's, approved this,
Is that the truth?
I don't think so.
It is?
I don't think.
Well,
Because the rule doesn't, it gives us the
So
freedom to
then-
not do the
That's
state.
right.
Yeah,
So that's gonna put us,
I mean, again, home rule frees you
yeah, we're. not
from the
liable.
caps that you're now under as a third-class city.
but you don't really want to mention caps in something like this.
That's correct.
But
Nor
that's
do you-
why I like the vagueness of, that the increase would have to be by not stating a percentage, not stating, just any increase would be majority vote of council.
Plus
would
one.
require
Oh, it would be a super majority. Yeah, 4 out of 5.
So there's some kind of, okay, I know that somebody has to vote for this. They just can't just all, somebody just can't come in and say, we're raising it,
Just like you can't, one person can't raise it now.
We're
Yeah.
talking about a cap.
Right.
People, I see what Neil's saying. People are gonna look at this and go, we will just,
Mm-hmm.
at somebody's whim, we're gonna get a tax
What
increase.
about
Because it's every year.
Right.
any increase in rate of greater than 5% requires the 4 votes, like Mike suggested. Michael suggested.
To put the 5 in.
5.5, or whatever percentage, maybe 10%, I don't know. But at least that shows the public that we're just not gonna
Yeah,
double your
we're-
taxes in 1 year.
We're trying to keep it under control somewhat, but we don't wanna go broke doing that either.
Is there any history
Yeah.
of tax being decreased?
Pardon me?
Is there any history of any tax being decreased? I mean, should you put the word decreased into this?
Well, I've seen home rule communities increase the earned income tax and decrease the millage on the real estate tax. Where,
Right. That's
go ahead.
That's what our plan was, to do that, to increase the earned income tax and reduce the millage, so that it would be more of a
Offset.
wash,
An offset.
but then give a more stable funding source on into the future.
Based off of
what about, we got 5%.
Debbie's typing.
Oh, that, okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how this would be worded. I have in the event that any existing taxes are proposed to be increased by more than 5% in any fiscal year, there must be a super majority vote of 4 council members.
Right.
Is that what we're talking about?
Or 4 out of 5, yes.
So now it says, in the event that any existing taxes are proposed to be increased by more than 5% in any fiscal year, there must be, oops, I forgot B, a super majority vote of 4 out of 5 council members.
When you say existing taxes, you mean existing tax rate?
No, well, any tax category, I guess, or,
Well, I just want to define what you mean by existing taxes. Is it the levy or is it the rate?
well, it's both, right?
I know, but it may be, I'm just trying to pin down. Can you increase the rate up to 5%? Or if you do it more than 5%, are you increasing the rate? I mean, what triggers this provision? Is it more than a 5% rate increase or more than a 5% levy increase? And you won't know the levy
In
until,
the event that any existing tax category is a rate, okay. You wanted to put rate in here is what you're saying.
I mean, I'm just throwing it out for consideration. Yeah.
In the
Instead of
event that
category.
any existing tax rate is proposed to be increased by more than 5% in any fiscal year, there must be a super majority vote of 4 out of 5 council members.
Is there any, why only 5%? Or did I miss that?
Well, that would be 5% on real estate, 5% on earned income, 5% on deed transfer.
What's the difference between a majority and a super majority?
A majority is 3, a super majority is 4.
So what's the difference? Why do we need 4 instead of 3?
I thought that's what council.
More of a sense of protection.
A little more safeguard.
More vote.
Yeah. You want, it has to be more people that say, yes, let's do this. Makes it, a little harder to get more people.
Question, what is a normal, like what would a municipality normally raise their taxes by? Is 5% kind of like a normal tax rate hike?
Our current millage rate, I gotta think now, it's 34 mils. So 5% would be what, 1.5 mils or something?
34 times 1.05.
5%.
That would take you to 35.7 mils if your rate's 30.
On real estate might be low.
5 years, that's 25%.
Well, it's all right though. I mean, it just requires 4 votes. That's not a problem.
I mean, like, is 5% the right number? That's what I'm asking. Like,
That's
should it
kind of
be
what
higher?
Michael was asking, like, why was 5? Yeah, he was asking about
Yeah.
5%.
Well, I guess that was my point from the very beginning. It's very arbitrary. I mean, whatever number you put in there is going to be arbitrary. So you
It
can
doesn't
put
have
5
to be.
10 or 5 mils or 3 mils, but it's all arbitrary, really.
Well, what I'm saying is maybe it doesn't have to be super arbitrary if we know like what municipalities generally sort of lean towards.
Or do
Then-
we even need to put that in? Can we just say is proposed to be increased in any fiscal year? Do we have to give them an exact percent?
No.
I think
I try not to tie yourself to a certain number.
Yeah, I wouldn't put the percentage, that'll be decided during that tax year what the percent is gonna be. So if we just say, we're gonna make it a super majority vote before this can happen, there's a sense of protection there.
So is that the consensus then?
I mean, so right now we have our council's being like completely, like there's mistrust of council. And it's because that people think, not necessarily reality, people think that the council's all in cahoots. So if a council's all in cahoots and we mistrust government, what would a supermajority really matter in the end? That's not going to change anything because they're all in cahoots anyway. That's the perception, not necessarily reality.
Right.
So like having that as the one protection probably won't
Yeah, I don't think so.
be seen as,
But by the time this goes out, there's gonna be different council.
yeah, but that's not,
No,
That-
the sitting council will be still sitting until the end of the year.
That's true. This is
I don't know
not,
that that matters that much. I think it's like a general mistrust of government. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Well, it's better than not having any wording, I think.
I feel like you're talking, you don't have some type of cap protection, it's not going to go through. So all the other stuff afterward not even going to matter. we'll be looking at Act 47.
Yeah,
Well, remember the young lady who came to one of the meetings, she sat right back here. What was her name?
Ourselves.
Darcel. And she came right out and said,
Mhm.
if there's any inkling of tax increases, it'll get voted down, right?
right. And that's why Neil brought it up.
Yeah.
And that's why we're trying to get some wording that said, people can say, okay.
Well, the wording is hiding the
Yeah.
truth.
I mean, I believe there should be some raising of taxes.
Oh, we
You know what
know.
I mean?
Yeah,
You
but
know,
it just can't be like they can just keep going up and up and up
Every
and
year.
up, you
You
know.
take 5% every year, that's 25% in 5 years.
And if you have no cap, it could be 25% year after year after year. So,
We're probably gonna spend all night on this one.
I think they.
Well, you want to finish up? There's only a few more sections and we can come back to it if everyone wants to do that. Think about it.
And
No, this is,
something that the elected council people should be here for as well.
Right. So we could make this homework to try to think about some wording here and come back to it.
I'm just worried that we're coming up with this wording to hide the fact that we're gonna raise.
Well,
taxes.
no, we're not. It's saying that if, the rates go up, it's just, I mean, it is stating,
They know their taxes haven't been
Right.
raised in so long, so they
we're not
should
saying
know.
they're not gonna be raised. We're just trying to make them feel like
Maybe go
somebody's
down.
not just gonna go crazy with raising taxes.
yeah.
That's what we're trying to get wording to fit.
So that's what,
Hey,
that's
this-
what we have to do for us.
It's unreasonable to expect that a municipality would never raise taxes. But I mean, that's just unreasonable.
Right, it is.
Yeah,
Neil,
Listen,
yeah, Neil, what do you think about does the number of members voting, like the supermajority, does that make a difference? Do you think for yourself or others, or do you think there needs to be an actual amount that's stated
yeah.
that would,
Because I agree with Bethany when she said, people are not gonna trust that, just like they won't trust the 3 to 2, because they don't, and I believe it's, it's manufactured, they distrust, for the council, but they don't trust it, so there's not some type of wording that says there's a cap, your tax is gonna be raised up so much at a certain point in time, that people are not gonna vote for it.
Which brings us back to Debbie, how can we determine that when we don't have really actual numbers to work with?
Yeah, and I wanted to address the question Bethany asked about what is typical. And I hate to say this, but there's no typical because I work with some communities where 1 mil of tax will bring in $1 million. And I work with other communities where 1 mil of tax only brings in $25,000. And actually, I'm trying to find Beaver Falls right now to see. We did
I
that
think it's
calculation.
55.
Yeah, I thought it was relatively low. It's like 55,000, which is not very much when you think of it. That doesn't even pay one employee's salaries and benefits for the most part.
Yeah. This is a tough section to get.
Yeah, it was.
This is really tough to,
Put a cap, some type of cap. People vote and you get more taxes. You might not get as much as you need, as inflation grows and, the
so
budget.
would you rather see like a percentage still in there?
No, I would just put taxes may increase based on the fiscal needs of the city.
Well,
I
that's,
think you need to put that in the charter. May increase, people know they may.
yeah,
What they're worried about is how much.
how
they're
much?
gonna-
Yeah, they're just worried about how sky high is this gonna get.
If it's gonna be an issue about voting yes or no against it, then I think there should be some sort of percentage in that.
Question is, what is the percentage though?
Yeah, would we be stuck with that percentage?
Or at least a
Or
year?
change, for a year.
Oh, okay.
Doug, that was very good. I just found it. It's 49,735. That's what we calculated 1 mil of tax would bring.
Thanks. I was pretty close. Yeah.
Yes, you were.
I think I would be in favor of saying they can't be raised more than 5% in any given year. And I mean, I think it was Neil kind of figuring this out, you know, even at that 5%, but that means that you could start changing council members every 2 years. So if you're upset by that, you can start voting people out with just a 10% increase in your taxes over a 2-year period. So I think I agree with you, Neil. If there isn't, and I don't like to call that a cap. A cap seems to me to be you can't, but it is a cap. It's a cap on the amount that you can increase it. But I'd like to come up with another word other than cap, or just say taxes may not be increased more than 5% a year.
And you're saying, Doug, get rid of the supermajority concept.
Yeah.
Yes.
And put the 5% back.
Yes. That I mean, I'm just one person talking, but that's what after hearing all this and trying to digest it, I think that's what I think.
5%, I don't think it's going to be high enough. I'm thinking it should be around 10. Because our current real estate is 34, so 10% is what, 3 mils? Well, I guess that might be enough.
But then Jerry, you could turn right around and do that again the following year.
Right.
If you found it wasn't enough.
And then I'm thinking when we get reassessed, and just for example, if our reassessment's double what we are today, just use this for illustration, and our millage is cut in half to 17. Now 5% is not very much as far as mills.
Right. I think, Jerry, what we need is your educated numbers. Like, you know directly what the changes would be. So instead of doing like an arbitrary number, it does need some like education behind it. And that's where you come in.
Well, I'll put something together.
And I'm wondering, does it need to be does the percentage or the rate of change need to be different for deed transfer, earned income, and real estate, because they all change at different rates, right?
Well, that could be.
I mean, that's not to make it more complicated, but making it too simple, it would be arbitrary.
Yeah, but I think I would argue, let's just make it simple. There's one, as simple as we can, 1% for either and of course, the council has the opportunity to balance those two. The reality is that the EIT is going to bring in, and that's why we're really meeting, is the EIT is going to bring in more money when we change that than the millage was going to bring in. And we were at the top rate of what we could do with the EIT, the earned income tax. So we had no room to maneuver there. So that pushed us back to only millage, and millage wasn't bringing in enough income. So, and I believe that I'm not a big fan of property tax. I think the earned income tax is a fairer way to go. But now I'm digressing. But I would say, I don't think we want to put, one figure for EIT and another figure for millage. I think the council can decide which one's going to go, get us the money that we need, and balance that out.
So if I'm calculating correctly, someone double check me on this. So your current EIT is 0.5. That would only get you to 0.55 if it's capped at 5%, right?
Right.
Okay,
I'm
So
sorry,
I
it would
was
get you
used-
525. At 10%, it gets you 0.55. At 5%, it gets you 0.525. So it really doesn't do much for you at that percentage. And you said 34 mils times 5% is 35. That only gets you 1 mil, 1.7 mil.
Okay, so the math people got to help me out because I'm an English major. So
That's why
yeah,
headache.
yeah. So Kevin's idea was that we would change the EIT from 0.51%. So the tax rate, because right now it's 0.5 to the city, 0.5 to the school district. And his idea was raise the city to 1, and then you have the school tax 0.5. So now you have 1.5, and
that's 100% increase.
Yeah.
Can't
Yeah.
do it. If you leave this language in about a limit
Right.
or a cap, you can't do it.
Yeah.
You'd have to do it over a period of 5+ years, maybe 10 years.
Yeah, that's these
so
cap-
so what you're showing me is 5% is way too low. We can't. 5% is a very minimal tax increase,
right.
and
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
probably need to look at least 10. It's hard for me to think we would want that number to go above 10%.
Or if you're gonna, again, if you're gonna put caps in, you're probably gonna want to do them specifically to no more than 2 mils for real estate, no more than 1% on EIT, no more. I think the percentage, unless you do the percentage of what is collected instead of a percentage of the rate. So instead of the rate increase, if you do a percentage increase of what is estimated to be collected. So for instance, we said you get 50,000 on a mill. 5% of that, a 5% increase would be an extra, 52,500. Let me try that again.
It's not going to be very much at all.
Nah,
It's got to be.
Nah.
Yeah. I see that now. That
See,
the 5% isn't going to work. So you were suggesting, Debbie, and I just gave that long speech against what Bethany said.
Caps are really tough.
I know. I see why you're telling us not to do it at all, but I'm in Neil's boat. I don't think if we just say, hey, it can be whatever we want, whatever the council wants it to be.
That's it.
I think this is going to go down.
It is.
Yep.
So, yeah, I do think we need to think about this. If there's going to be caps, you're going to need to make them reasonable so that you're not, really restricting the future councils and what they can do to balance the budget.
Yep. Okay, so get me back that.
You go, Doug.
Get me back to I don't want to lose what you just said, and that is giving them the rates. So if we, and the EIT, the earned income tax too, as well, is that what if we said that can't go up by more than
Yeah, I mean, we
5.
could do something like, oops, let me get rid of this language right here for a minute here. So we can say no existing tax rate shall be increased by more than real, and then just have real estate tax 2 mills. That is something like that. We can play with the numbers, but in any
Okay, so-
in any fiscal year, I'll put that in.
Yes.
In our initial discussions, wasn't earned income 1.5?
Well, it's
0.5.
0.5 already, so that means that it could go to 1.5 based on this, and then
We were
it
looking.
could be increased by 1%.
Okay.
I think I would like it to say when we 0.5% on the earned income tax, so that it could only go from, I mean, again, using Kevin's model, the city was going to go from 0.5 to 1. So that's only
This would be a max though. You still could go to 0.5 if you wanted to. This would be the max.
I see. Okay. And try to set the maximums a little
Right.
higher than, yeah. Okay.
What is that?
I can play with that language to make it a little bit better. But is that the intent? I mean, where's everyone right now?
Percentage wise.
2 over 34, about 7%, 8%.
Increase?
Do we need to have a percent up there by the mills since the other two were percent?
No, because real estate, that's how you levy it. You levy it with mills, not percentages. Earned
Jerry,
income would be transfer levied by percentages.
Okay, so Jerry just did the math, that 2 mills equals 6% for people like me who are English-based, and I just have a headache now. 'Cause there's too much
I was a
math
music
happening.
business major. I can count.
Go ahead, Bethany.
I was saying I was a music business major, so I can count to 4 and after that subdivide.
Hey. I just sat back and said, go ahead, math people, I'll listen.
Michael, have you seen schedules like this in home rule charters?
No, I haven't. It really defeats why you have a home rule charter.
Don't say that.
But Michael, this is per year. So this isn't saying that's all you can do forever and ever, like the third class code says, bang, that's it. You can't ever go above this. This says in any given year, it can only go up that much. So that seems to me that that's a substantial difference from the third class city code, without making it, hey, the sky's the limit and trying to sell that.
I think the issue, at least from my perspective, because having seen these, not as many as Michael's seen, but having seen a number of these, the philosophy about home rule is that you take off the restrictions that the state puts on you. And so this kind of defeats that purpose, because now you're self-imposing restrictions that you really don't have to do.
But that self-imposition might be the right thing for our city, though.
It could be. It could be.
Yeah, because without it, it's like Neil said, the majority, they're going to look at that and vote no.
That's the prevailing. So I don't know a lot about the opposition, the reasons to oppose this, but the narrative in the opposition is just what we're trying to protect against, and that is that it gives the city unlimited power to raise taxes as they see fit. And I know you and I know, all of us know, I mean, we're sitting here talking about like how unpopular it is to raise taxes. But I mean, it doesn't matter to people who are paying that if they can vote them out in 2 years, because they're paying those taxes for 2 years. So, I mean, I understand that the point is to alleviate limitations, but I also think the point is also to serve the community that we're writing this for. And I think that this community has a strong distrust of government, especially local government. And so I don't think limitations are always a negative. I think limitations can steer us in the direction that we want to go in a measured fashion. And I don't know. I mean, I just look at this and I think if we don't put this in, then the people who don't see a benefit to Home Rule Charter will do fear mongering to no extent, and this will never pass.
Well said.
So I'd rather have limitations in it and pass it and have a chance of passing it than have no limitations and no chance of passing it.
Hey, let me play devil's advocate just for 1 minute.
Yeah, please. That's yes.
With these limits in here specifically spelled out, your people who are opposed to the charter can take those numbers and say, you're going to raise your taxes by 2 mils. They're going to raise your earned income. I'm just saying, sometimes more information, it gives people an opportunity to use it against you. But we had a similar discussion when we were doing the Newcastle charter, decided to just leave the one simple, plain language, one sentence in, because we really didn't want to draw people's attention to the possibility of having their taxes increase. So
but people's attention is already there.
You can increase them by 2 mils by 1%, by 1%.
In Newcastle, were people already was there a lot of buzz about this based on the tax? Like, we already have attention.
Yes, but the point the commission kept making was, yes, but you don't want your property taxes raised. You don't want your property taxes raised. If anything, you want it to be EIT or transfer some other tax. So yeah, there was quite a bit of pushback about it. This is just an attempt to raise taxes.
I can see where you're coming from. It's a hard place to be.
It is. It's tough. It's a tough decision. And I just wonder, are they going to attach themselves to these numbers and use them against you? That's all.
So we're between a rock and a hard place.
We're also going to ask if there's no verbiage. You're going to ask us.
Yeah.
And we're going to lie to them?
No.
No,
No.
that's
It's transparency.
Right.
I mean,
so I was asking Jerry for verification, but that phrase "in any fiscal year" essentially means every year.
Right.
So we can raise the millage and and the income tax and the deed transfer tax. So if we're saying any fiscal year, we're telling residents every single year
this could happen,
this could happen.
but it's transparency.
Yeah, and I guess that's my point, is it does draw your attention to that.
And then the other, are we limiting ourselves to 2 mil, 1% and then 1%?
Absolutely. That's what it's doing.
Per year, yeah.
Yeah.
For 1 year, we're limited.
Yep.
Now, earned income tax at 1% represents twice as much money as you get now.
So how's everybody still feeling now?
Well, I have like a percentage. Like I know Jerry was saying 5% not enough. Especially you start out, the first year, the first time you raise it, you want to get as much tax as you can.
All right.
So 10%, and then maybe the next year go down to 5, then down to 2.5. So it's not going up and up and up every year.
Well, I would think once they increase taxes, they're never gonna lower it.
Yeah.
No, not
They don't
lower.
have to
I'm
increase it
saying
here.
Oh, yeah.
raise it 10% the first year, if you know, then 5% the
Oh,
next
okay,
year,
yeah.
then 2.5%, or,
It could
something
be
like that.
0%.
Well, no, I'm saying something of that effect,
What I'm saying
Or it
is,
could be 0%,
it's council's decision. What this is,
Mhm.
limit is the upper limit, not, it
Oh,
doesn't have
okay.
to be the upper limit. It can be from 0 to
Oh,
whatever the
okay.
limit is.
Maybe it should be pointed out, council could also decide not to raise anything in a year.
But that's just a, that's
No.
the upper limit.
I just know there's
The
too
main
much
question
math
is-
happening and
How can the citizens of Beaver Falls feel that council just don't run rampant and increase
Right.
the taxes? That's the question we're trying to answer.
and it's rough because I see both sides of the argument.
They ain't just Beaver Falls. Nobody, wants your taxes raised. Nobody trusts the government to not raise them.
Well, thing is now with the third class city, though, there are limits.
Yeah.
That becomes the governing part of the difficulty is that that's not enough for me to govern the city of Beaver Falls. That's why we're here.
I feel like they need to be raised. There has to be some type of limit.
So how's everybody feeling right now about the way it looks right now? Do we still need to think about maybe make this a homework assignment, think about how we really want this to be worded and come back and discuss it more?
Yeah, I think it's worth revisiting. I think it's worth thinking through,
Yeah,
sleeping on it.
yeah,
I don't hate it
Yeah.
the way it is, but I do understand what you're saying, Debbie, that drawing attention to it can be a bad thing. But it's the only issue people are talking about besides transparency.
right,
So
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Okay.
It's a biggie.
yeah.
I agree with that. I think we should wait and think about it. So I also think that means we should not have our session with the new folks
For the next meeting. Because
the
this
next
needs to be
meeting.
worked out before we talk to them. We need to be able to
Exactly.
say, here's what we're
Yes.
thinking.
A good point, though.
Yeah.
Now, do you still want to meet on the 10th or do you want to just wait until the 17th?
I would like to meet and discuss this on the 10th and then invite the newcomers on the 17th. Does that seem reasonable that we can hammer
Right.
this out?
Hopefully we can
And-
hammer this out.
Yeah,
We might
and
be
I guess
thinking-
if not, we'll just have to say we'll push it off again, but
Yeah,
this is it. I agree. And there's no sense in sitting here and thinking, okay, we should really be convinced that, of what we're doing right at this spot.
No, I agree. This is one of the most important provisions in the entire charter, so there's
Am I allowed to ask one more question?
absolutely.
No,
Not Michael Anderson, no.
It says, subject to in the applicable provisions of state law. Does that mean that we would only have to raise taxes because of some state laws?
Mm-mm.
You mean that at all?
Is that what it's saying though?
Now, that goes back to what Mike Foreman was saying, that there are certain categories of taxation that are permitted by state law. So basically, and again, it gets down to real estate or an income deed transfer.
Because then, to me, it just reads, taxes are only gonna go up if there's some change in state law. And that's not the case here.
No, it says I think it's pretty clear that the council in its sole discretion shall determine the rates of all taxes.
Then
Unless they're restricted by state law in some way.
All right.
Michael Foreman, can you give me, we're close to the end of the meeting, I know. Can you give me 2 minutes and tell me why we should not set any limit or cap?
Number one, because the Home Rule Charter Optional Plans Law allows for flexibility in the taxation of these three taxes. In addition, it also gives the governing body the discretion based upon their fiscal needs in any given year to set tax rates in order to meet the health, safety, and welfare of a community relative to the municipal service delivery system. In addition, it also allows council to look at what its fiscal needs are in a subsequent year relative to whether you have government mandates, whether or not you've taken on additional responsibilities, or otherwise, that again, the governing body, they are the supremes, and they're the body that should be unfettered or should be able to set tax rates based upon what they believe to be the best taxation structure to pay for the municipal service delivery system, along with personnel, insurance, healthcare, and other, related direct, fixed costs. So that's my take on why charter should be silent on any kind of tax rates or tax caps or tax limits. The governing body are the supremes. And I know I'm repeating myself, but what Debbie's saying makes sense. You don't want to give people focus on something that this charter, yes, finances and revenue streams are certainly important, but a charter is more than just that. But I know this is one key ingredient to it, but I just sense that don't want to tie your hands because you can never pretell the future.
Yeah, and let me give you a cautionary tale, a recent one. So the city of Farrell has a home rule charter, and I'm working with them right now. Last year, they lost a major employer that cut half of their earned income tax collection, and they had to, in 1 year, raise taxes 1% on the earned income and 4.5 mils of real estate tax in order to continue to function and to continue to support their police and public safety and public works. So the point being that if they had not had a home rule charter that had no cap and the flexibility for them to make those decisions, they would have really had to shut down. I mean, basically shut down. You lose half of your EIT, you're gonna shut your operation down.
Or come back into Act 47, which they were in for probably 30 years.
Right. So the point is, you just don't know what the future looks like. You really just don't know.
Right, it already happened.
But the number one issue for us is getting this thing passed in the first place.
That's my whole
Yeah,
point.
it'll be dead in the water.
But there's only one thing worse than not having a home rule charter, and that's having a bad home rule charter that restricts the officials to particular caps and things that make it almost impossible to operate. So, and I know Michael and I could probably point out some really bad home rule charters too.
I just think we really should probably go home and sleep on this
Yeah.
and just think it through some more. Discuss it more on the 10th, push the guest back because we're still trying to work it out.
Yeah,
So we're just gonna go with our regular meeting on the 3rd?
Yeah, because we still need to work this. Well, not on the
No,
3rd,
regular-
that's commencement.
Oh,
regular meeting on the 10th,
So what?
and then the
Commencement's on the,
invitation meeting on the 17th.
we're not
Who
gonna
is going to
No,
extend that invitation? Or like, how are we gonna make that happen?
Neil's going to do that.
I will.
Oh, okay, perfect. I'm sorry, I missed that.
Not for next meeting.
no,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, for the 17th.
17.
but hopefully, we might still be discussing this on this.
Yes.
'Cause we didn't
Well,
even
and
get
we may have
past.
conflicts with our guests too, so, it may have to get pushed around a little bit, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is it. I mean,
Right.
this is, we have to
right,
get
this is
this
the thing.
right. Yep.
I don't know if anybody wants to just like skip forward and try to see the rest tonight, or, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of late. If we,
Yeah,
we can, I
okay.
mean, there's only a few provisions. Take a look at them. They have to do with, you know, the audit and how funds are paid, but I think this is the one we really need to focus on. I think we can get through the others at the next meeting.
Okay. All right, so we have our homework assignment.
I'll send it out as a reminder to everyone.
All right, anybody want a motion to adjourn?
Thank you, Ms. Graff.
Neil made a motion to adjourn, Michael Anderson seconded. And we're sorry we gave Debbie and Michael Foreman a headache tonight.
Oh,
Oh, it was great. It was great discussion.
I appreciate this healthy, productive, and insightful discussion.
Absolutely.
This is
Absolutely.
necessary and helpful, and I think you'll get to where you find some consensus.
Yep.
Don't apologize. This is what this is all about.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Thank you so much.
Good night.